All right, we have started the stream. We will see if it's going up because I did not pre-stream today because I want to make sure we get right into it. Let's double check. Well,
so is it going up?
Is it up? I see something. There it is.
Yeah, I see us.
Can everyone hear us and talk to us? So today we have No Nats 1, who I haven't seen since Gen Con, where we played a very fun game of, what are we playing?
Killer rabbits.
Killer rabbits.
Bunnies. Killer bunnies.
Killer bunnies.
And nobody won.
Nobody won. And we have Mark, as usual. So last week, I was away. I was out of town. And on Thursday, WotC announced One D&D and everything. And everyone's like, wow, Steve was accurate on everything, 100%. Yeah. And everyone was like, I saw it all over the Discords.
You were 100% accurate. Like, I know that you sometimes make videos where you'll say something is completely or 100 or something like that. And everyone who's watched our channel knows I'll be like, well, Steven, you know, it was like 10% and you said it was 100, but this time it was basically 100%.
Yeah, so I didn't know anything about what exactly you had predicted.
Everything. I mean, the big one was the one I started off with was I said that there's additions are gone, that they're never going to have an addition. It's not going to be called 5.5 or 6. And they literally, Chris Perkins, he almost said exactly what I was saying. Like, oh my God, they almost are taking my words. That's how exact it was. It was ridiculous.
I will say I'm not a fan of the way they worded it. I wrote it down specifically, and it's like, we are no longer in a position where we consider D&D an addition. It's just D&D.
No, I know, but they did that on purpose because here's the thing. So as people know, my background is business and finance, and I actually have worked with companies like Hasbro. I actually lived like 3 blocks from the toy building in Manhattan for a long time. I've been to Toy Fair. So almost all my predictions come from a business side point of view. That's the difference. It's like, I think everyone else looking at the game and how the game is built. And before we were talking and started the stream, I was saying that the game is it's not secondary, but that is not what's driving 99% of these decisions. It is marketing. It is trying to make as much money as possible. It's trying to break into new markets. It's trying to break into other languages. It's how to get as much money as possible directly, as opposed to through like toy companies or through bookstores or Amazon. It's all that. And that is really secret of looking and figuring out what they're gonna do. I said that they were gonna have like one brand, everything, basically everything. So with that being said, welcome everyone. If you have any questions and want to know the future of D&D, I'm here. And I can answer your questions.
He was right last time.
I was right last time.
Everything that Steven
one for one
from a marketing standpoint.
Yeah.
It was when he and I and Paul Hughes, who does some of our conversions for Battle Zoo and also works on Level Up. And it's not that Paul and I like disagreed when Steven said that.
Not
we
at
were
all.
like, no, that makes sense. But Steven was definitely right. Just right.
So if you have any questions, let us know. If you want to join the chat, to join the Discord, join the YouTube, please do.
And you
like
can join
and
the Discord
subscribe.
also. That's fine.
You could do that too. And of course, don't forget our Battle Zoo Bestiary, Strange and Unusual, Eldamon, Year of Ancestries, Eldamon decks, battles, card game. There's a lot going on. There's an
update today. If you like watching videos, it's a lot shorter than our usual video, though. It's like 9 minutes long, where I do a demo of a very prototype version of the card game so that you can figure out what the heck is this card game they keep talking about.
Yep.
Nice.
And it's and just go to Kickstarter.rollforcombat.com
or Eldamon.com
or Eldamon.com or anything.com. Well, anything.rollforcombat.com. There you go.
Anything.rollforcombat. Even if you go to nonat1s.rollforcombat.com, it'll go.
That's right. So I didn't watch your video, No Nat, about your predictions.
It wasn't a video, it was just like a long live stream of
live
rambling
one.
and
Okay.
stuff.
So we already have one from Ollie. Right. They didn't say oily. Ollie.
Yeah, you got it.
Oily.
Yay.
You're
say
100% today, Steven.
I am. I'm doing great. 5 pounds. So will it really be backwards compatible, or is that just a statement to try to keep people buying books in the short term?
Ooh, I'd love to take this one.
You can take this one. I know
right.
the answer, but let's hear yours.
I believe it will be backwards compatible, asterisk. There will be conflicting rulings between 5e original and One D&D, and there's probably going to be a sidebar or a preface somewhere saying at the GM's discretion, they will have to decide which rule to default to in any given situation, or even worse, they'll just say, at the end of the day, the GM can change any rule they want.
Yep.
Which is true, but would be a poor excuse for backwards compatibility.
Yep. It's going to be like Magic the Gathering. I mean, basically, Magic the Gathering is the easiest analogy because first they were both owned by Hasbro, and Magic has managed to successfully do this for 30 years. They've been able to, or is it 25 years? 25 years. No, 30 years. 30 years, yeah. I bought my first Magic set in 93. So, yeah, about 30 years. So, anyhow, Magic still works. Like, you can still use your alpha and beta cards in today's Magic, rule set. Do the cards completely make sense? And because interrupts don't exist anymore, now it's just instants, like thing like that. Like they've modified the rules, and I think Magic is like up to version like, God, I don't even know, like 14 of the rules. Like there are versions of Magic, and the rules do change over time. But can you use all your original cards with some modifications? The answer is yes, you can. And I have a feeling like this is really 5.5. They're not calling it 5.5. 6 would be a rewrite, which they're not doing. So it's 5.5. The same way 3.0 and 3.5 were kind of made. And it does lead to a lot of interesting issues because I do see a lot of people asking for them to remove the term race from the game. And now they're also addressing, the first update was about the races in 5e. And I don't see how they can remove the word race easily because it's just in too many existing books and properties. And like, yeah, imagine they wanted to call it ancestry. They can't, or not easily. I mean, I guess they could. They can just say, well, ancestry and race are now the same. And from now on, we're calling it ancestry. The problem is they have so many existing books that have race in it, so they're locked into a lot of weird decisions that they made 10 years ago, and I don't know how they're going to get out of them. I mean, Mark, do you have any ideas on that? I'm just curious.
I mean, I think you just said what I would do if I were them and I wanted to get out of it, which is say like introducing a new term, ancestry or heritage or whatever you want to use.
Right.
Ancestry is a new term we're using. It means the same thing as race did in your old books. If you ever see race there in the old books, that's what it is. If you just came in with One D&D, but that is an imperfect solution, obviously. But sometimes there are ways that you can get around it while still keeping some amount of reverse compatibility. I'll say that like being like reverse compatible is definitely a marketing thing, but that it doesn't mean it's not true about the work that the designers have to do in and whether or not it is reverse compatible. But the reason why it's more of a marketing thing than a practical thing is that even if you like kind of break your back making sure it's completely reverse compatible, like entirely, still a lot of people are not going to actually use the reverse compatibility. And having designed some systems, some of which had reverse compatibility. For example, Starfinder in many ways had some design things that were sort of like chained into it and held it back from other options due to the fact that it's obviously not reverse compatible with Pathfinder First, but the monsters from Pathfinder First had to be usable as Starfinder opponents. And anyone who understands both of the systems well enough realizes like how much of a challenge that was, because they're not even remotely similar in terms of like how certain scaling goes. But we did achieve that, and they are like 100% usable as monsters, even though they use a completely different rule set that you have to pull out. And but there's ones like 3.0, 3.5, they're even more compatible. 3.5, Pathfinder First. In the end, though, a very small percentage of groups actually took advantage of that, and it's for the same reason that a lot of groups don't buy third-party products, even if they actually would go. We willing to go online and say, "I bet they're fine. I bet they're good. Even I really like this idea," but people want to have a wall or a line that they draw and are just like, everything on this side of the line we're going to do, and everything that's not, we're not going to do. And so people often, the line they draw is official products from that company for that edition. And so they'll just be like, yeah, I'm not going to allow this reverse compatible stuff because I know there could be some things that are unexpected, at least in the new edition, even though they technically work together, but like the edition doesn't expect that combination because it's not from the same one. So they just cut the line.
And one thing I wanted to say is that one of the reasons we're also very accurate, I feel, first of all, we have Mark who worked at Paizo, so he understands it from a production point of view. I do as well, not as well as Mark, because I'm still new to the full production methodology for role-playing games. But I also have a background in video games, and I've known Chris Perkins a long time. I've actually known him since the 3.0 days, and I've spoken to him before he got popular and famous and impossible to get in touch with. And I used to talk quite a bit about his goals and ambitions for 4th edition, and I don't think they changed, actually. I don't think they've actually changed in any way, shape, or form. I think he's just finally getting the chance to kind of go full digital video gamey, which is something he was really trying to do with 4th edition big time. He was a big World of Warcraft fan. John Statz, one of our players, was one of the leads in World of Warcraft. They would talk many hours about World of Warcraft together. I just don't think I think they're finally just getting to the point where they are being able to turn D&D into what I think is going to be very different than what the fans think. And I think the fans, again, they're looking at these documents and they're looking at the playtest material, and I see that and I'm like, wow, it is distraction, man. Like this is literally marketing genius. They are using this to stay in the narrative for the next year and a half, the same way Elden Ring did an amazing job with that within the video game world. They did one of the best jobs I've ever seen. Actually, hold on. I'll get to that. I'll get to your question in one sec. Let me just finish my thought. And they are giving this out so that the people who are really, really hardcore have something to latch on to. They can do videos about it. They can talk about it. They can keep it in the news cycle. They can keep it on YouTube. They can keep it in the search engines. But then the 98% of the players who couldn't care less about any of this, who are literally just buying it to play it with their friends or their family, the same way you might play Scrabble or Monopoly, they don't care. None of this matters to them. They don't care about, oh, you get a new first level feat. They don't even know what a feat is. They don't care about any of this. So
why do you say they don't care?
Because they don't even know what it is. I'm talking about the super casuals. The super casuals are people who just want to jump in, play a fun game, have an adventure, and then maybe if they like it, they'll play more than once a year or something like that, or they're playing with friends. When I was a kid, this is a long time ago, and it's actually, I ran, of all the things, it was not Salt Marsh, Ravenloft, is that I had a friend of my parents, who was an adult, and of course in retrospect they were probably in their 30s, and I was like 14, and they wanted to play D&D, so I came in and I ran a game for them of Ravenloft, and that was probably the first and last time they ever played D&D. It was just like, they just had fun. It was just something they can try out. It was something they can do. I hear that a lot. I talk to a lot of parents. I'm older than you guys, and I have kids, and their kids are getting into it. And I talk to a lot of kids that they play it, and they'll play it a few times, but then that's it. They have a lot more distractions. True, you're 100% right. But the ones that are into it, they do care about the feats at first level. They do care about all these documents. This, they're able to hit both parties at the same time, basically. So Phoenix D Black. I'm not going to try to pronounce the German at all.
König der Miserablen Vorwitze.
There you go. €5. How is the situation for third-party publishers right now? I feel like there might be difficult times ahead. Well, yes, maybe. There's two schools of thoughts that people were talking about at Gen Con, which is terrifying. Is one, they get rid of the gaming license, the GDL.
The
OGL. I keep thinking GDL. OGL, which is the open gaming license, which allows third-party people to publish for Pathfinder and 5e. If they get rid of it for 5e, then no one can publish for 5e.
You think they'd do that?
A lot of people did, but I actually, and Mark and I talked about it this week, I'm actually kind of reassured, because to do that, you need to draw a hard line in the sand, unless the lawyers are really creative. You have to basically say this is a new edition and all prior editions are extinct, and you can't have it both ways. You can't keep it backwards compatible and keep the OGL intact. So
you can't keep it backwards compatible because without having an OGL for the new stuff, because the original OGL was not revocable for the old stuff.
Correct.
So like, for example, to give an example, in 4th edition, they did revoke the OGL, but they couldn't revoke it for 3rd. Obviously, we know there's Pathfinder.
Right.
But what they did is they created a GSL for 4th. They're like, hey, yeah, you can join in with 4th. If you sign this GSL, which says that you're ripped to shreds everything you've ever made under the OGL that you still have in physical copies, and you're not going to do it again. And it had a bunch of other terms on it. And so that's sort of what they did, because they drew, like Steven said, they drew a distinction. Is like, this is the new one. It doesn't have the OGL. And and you have to stop with the OGL stuff. But given the backwards compatibility and claiming that it's not an edition and there are no editions, it might be a little weirder or more challenging for them to get rid of the OGL.
I don't think they are, and I
think they would lose a huge chunk of fan base too.
No, it would. Yes and no, but I think they're going to do something much more nefarious.
Oh,
and Ollie Wright, he super chatted for £5, like I said, pounds before it's euros. So do you think third-party publishers are willing and able to now learn Unreal 5 so they can publish for one VTT in the future? Yes. So this is where I was going with this. They are branding D&D. This is what Hasbro's going to do. They're branding D&D as OneD&D, and anything under the One D&D brand. I'm just going to use that for now, because people are like, oh, I hate that term. I'm like, that term's actually pretty accurate for what they're trying to do, and I don't think it's changing. They're making a One D&D. This is their D&D. This is the original. This is the OG D&D, and anything under One D&D is legit. It is the real thing. It is from us. Yeah, we have the OGL and there's a whole bunch of other things, but if you want to be part of our ecosystem, it's OneD&D. And what they're going to do is, because 2 of the 3 pillars of their platform were digital, which is a lot. That's a lot. And I'm surprised that it was just 2 of the 3. I wouldn't be surprised if it was 3 of the 3. The new VTT, because everyone's like, oh, they're going to buy Roll20, they're going to buy this. I'm like, they're not buying anyone. They came up with their own system. It looks amazing. It's a video game. I wouldn't be surprised if not only does the system, which looks freaking fantastic, the new digital desktop for D&D, that it is a video game in the sense that you select your characters. There'll be pre-made characters you select. You can very quickly pre-roll, re-roll characters, get it in there. It'll save it just like a video game. And then when you want to move your characters, it does everything for you. Whether it might not even be turn-based, it could even just be real time, that you're just moving your character and then they can only move so far and do so many actions. It's all automated. Even the combat will be automated. Even the GM or DM in the case of 5e will be automated in time. I don't think that will be right away. Everything will be automated. I believe the VTT will be completely free. And I will believe people are like, oh, I hope it's not filled with microtransactions. It is going to be nothing but microtransactions.
Yeah, we live in a microtransaction world.
It's going to be the world of microtransactions. And what they're going to do is that I think they're going to start off with official licensees who can get their products into the VTT. And then over time, it's going to be like the App Store or any of these other stores where, yes, you can create product, submit it, like Foundry does and everyone else and Roll20. They'll have to approve it like Apple does with their process. And then if they approve it, then they get a cut of the sales, which could be like 30, 40, 50%. And that way, they're going to make a marketplace. They're all about ecosystem. They will love this more than you can imagine. And they're already starting this. They already have their new book, the Dragonlance book. You buy the book and you get it, the digital part. This is the first time they've ever done this. They're going to make it that you buy the book, you get the digital aspect, and you get the VTT aspect. You get all of that. And that VTT, by the way, it's going to work on everything. It's going to work on Xbox, PlayStation, your computer, your phone. It's going to work on every single platform, which is why it's Unreal Engine. And Unreal Engine also has 1 million people who know how to use this. It's very easy for people to get content in there. Are you going to say no, Nat?
Do you think it's only going to be utilizing the one D&D rule set, though?
Yes, 100%.
Yeah, you don't think it'll allow any kind of
never.
Interesting.
Nope, not a single. Nope. That's the thing. It's not a VTT. Everyone's like, oh, it's a VTT.
It's not,
like,
yeah.
No. It's the Dungeons and Dragons game online. It is the same way Magic. So think of Magic the Gathering, and I don't know if you ever played the new Magic, the Magic client. Arena.
Yeah.
I was there. Okay, I was working with Blizzard. I was there. I was in a car with Brian David Marshall, and he and I were talking when Blizzard came out with their Hearthstone. And he and I were in the car, and I was talking, and this is back when they didn't even have like they had that crappy Magic the Gathering, the client, and back then, but it worked. It did the job. And I was saying, dude, man, Hearthstone is going to destroy Magic. And they're like, no way. There's no way. Magic's too robust. It's got this whole, and they were going on and on and on how never it will happen, ever. And then I said to him, let me tell you something. And this is back when Hearthstone was in the beta. I said people were spending on average $500 on their cards in a beta, and they weren't keeping the cards. You're going to get destroyed. I was like, I guarantee you are going to get destroyed. And they were initially, until they very quickly pivoted and decided they got to stop fooling around with these crappy Magic the Gathering clients and come out with something real.
People tend to underestimate the value of convenience.
Yeah.
Hearthstone, it's not the same game as Magic, but imagine if you had Magic in your pocket.
Oh, yeah.
Just on your phone. You and your friend can pull out your phones and play Magic together. It's Hearthstone, but yeah.
I mean, Hearthstone made more money on digital than on the computer. And
I believe it.
And here's the sad part. This just came out, their latest earnings, that Blizzard made more money on their digital games than their computer games.
It's actually been that way. I don't know about for Blizzard specifically, but ever since I think 2015, mobile games have made astronomically more than consoles. There's a graph out there from a few years ago. It's terrifying. It's got like Xbox earnings, Nintendo earnings, Sony earnings, and then 2/3 of the graph is just the mobile market.
Yep.
They are making more money than all console companies combined.
Yeah. And that's what's going to happen with this one D&D, because they're like, think about how many hoops you have to jump through to play D&D. You have to get the books. You got to find a group. You got to learn it. I mean, there's a lot. There's a lot going on. Imagine you download something for free. It randomly gets you some people to play with or without chat. Maybe you can go on little baby adventures that only take 30 minutes an hour or something.
Oh, I bet the starter set will be free.
Yeah. Oh, I bet you they're gonna have a whole bunch of things in there that are free.
Yeah, but I'll bet you'll have to pay to make your own character.
Oh yeah, you have to pay.
Pre-gens are free. But,
yeah, pre-gens and things like that, and then there'll be pre-made adventures. I mean, it's gonna work just. I mean, think of exactly what I'm discussing in the video game terms. It's going to be for D&D. That is exactly what they're going to do.
I mean, you could think about it, right? You have basic pre-gens for free, but for free, but you want to play Drist.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
I was thinking exactly that.
Oh yeah, they're gonna battle hammer in there. They're gonna category everyone.
The straw that will break this camel's back is if they end up having special pre-gens that actually bend or use the rules differently, but it's a gotcha system.
Of course. Well, I don't know if they're gonna go that far, but they might. I think they would, but I think they would do it within like they're gonna come out with like okay, they're already doing it. They're gonna have D&D 1, which will be like the classic. Then they'll have, of course, they're already coming out with all the other worlds because, man, I don't know if you guys remember. I remember I had a lot of friends who worked at Marvel. In my office, I was near everything. My office was 3 blocks away from Marvel. I used to have lunch in the Marvel offices all the time. And let me tell you, the Marvel offices are awesome. And then they went bankrupt. Think about that for a second. I don't know if anyone remembers that, but Marvel went bankrupt because no one was buying their comic books. That is not where the value of Marvel was. It was the characters and the world. And now they're worth the biggest. They're so big, they are entertainment. They literally are the definition of entertainment. They went bankrupt. Let me say that 10 more times. Okay, they went bankrupt. They had no money. No one wanted them. No one. You could have bought Spider-Man for nothing. This is how insane this was, and it was not that long ago. D&D.
It was on 96, yeah.
Yeah, I remember it clearly. It was unbelievable. Marvel was a stock. The stock was like for $4 a share. I don't even want to get into it. It's like you'd be very, 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 very rich if you bought it then. D&D is in a very similar boat. They have all these amazing worlds that they have fully developed, and they're not doing anything with them. And they have spent a lot of time and a lot of money and a lot of effort. Well, what do you know? 2023, they're bringing back a whole bunch of these worlds. What a surprise. I bet you they're going to bring them all back. And then, oh, you want your science fiction world? We got that. You want your fantasy world? We got that. You want your Mad Max type world? We got that. You want your Ravenloft type world? We got that. You know, they're going to come out with all these different types of worlds for different types of audiences. And that is how they're going to be marketing D&D. It's not going to be just D&D or just fantasy D&D. There's science fiction D&D, and there's Old West D&D, and there's hard fantasy D&D, and then there's Wasteland D&D, and then D&D is just going to be the engine that drives everything. I know I'm talking a lot. You guys can talk. I'm talking a lot.
You're good. Someone in my
called Steven's one.
I know, but it feels like I know. I feel like I'm lecturing almost. But
my stream chat put it best when they said D&D is trying its damnedest to become Kleenex, Xerox. They already are kind of, and they want to cement themselves as the brand name. Yeah. And I think they want to push that even harder, like you said, with different genres of official D&D. It's not just swords and spells anymore.
They want the best of both worlds. They want people to talk about D&D, but they want to be known as the D&D. That's why I don't think they're going to get rid of third party. And if anything, they're going to make third party work with them directly or indirectly. Like, you know, kind of like having, I mean, they're doing very well. It's also crowdsourcing. That's how you make money. I mean, Apple learned that, and so did Google, and all these other people are starting to learn. It's like, wow, you have everyone else do the work for you, and you're going to find a couple of good ones in there, and then you make money off everything. Sounds like a good plan for me. And they already have people doing this. I mean, look how many videos are out and how many people are creating Kickstarters like myself and, you know, running companies based on Dungeons and Dragons content. Now, for the actual development of the game itself, what do you think, Mark? Since let's go through the list. Amanda Hammond, who was all over the video, by the way, good for her. She was all over that video. We have, let's see, Patrick's over there now from Paizo, went to WotC. We have Ron Lundeen went over there.
Jason Tondro.
Jason Tondro went over there. Who else are we missing? I know there's a few more.
I know there are others who moved there before, like Judy and Adrian in editing,
right?
And Wes
Who's the art person
still
too?
Wes Schneider is still there. So there's like, what is that, like 8 or so people.
Yeah, they have some of the core best Paizo people now work at WotC. This is not a small thing. It's not like they have 1 or 2 people. This is a lot of people. And how does that make you feel, Mark, as someone who designed some of these systems? I was reading this. I was looking at the new rule set, and some of this there's like, I wouldn't say lifted, but I would say borrowed from Pathfinder 2nd Edition.
Well, the question is whether it's a homologous or analogous evolution. Right. And for those watching who are like, what is homologous and analogous evolution? Those are in biological evolution of species. A homologous evolution develops in a related species, and an analogous is unrelated and is just kind of convergent evolution. Like how everything evolves into a crab, even if they're not actually related to each other. Carcinization, that because turns out when you're in a certain niche, being a crab is like an optimized strategy. So arguably there are a lot of people there who are from Paizo. So it's possible it was homologous, aka like, hey, a Paizo people were there and we're like, this worked really well on Pathfinder 2. See if you can do some variant of that. But it's also possible to have analogous because the space is pretty similar. And certainly in Pathfinder 2, we had some things that we did that wound up being things that that 5e did that we had concept docs for before 5e was out with it, and just like they had been come up with it at the same time and independently. So I would say it's probably a mix of the two of them, right? Like I would say that I came up with a bunch of things in PF2 that wound up being the same thing in 5e by accident, but also I definitely know for sure, like later having done a more thorough analysis of 5e than I had before, especially after I joined with Roll for Combat, I saw some things where I was like, some of the things, like Stephen, not you, Stephen, but like Stephen Radney McFarlane was suggesting are actually real similar to 5e in ways that I could notice. And we didn't eventually do them, but it made me realize like that is too unusual and too specific to not be something that like took a cue. And there's nothing wrong with taking a cue, even though we didn't eventually do that thing because it wasn't right for PF2, even though it was probably more right for 5e. Just like reinventing the wheel is something that programmers, game designers, or other people like that think is always like, if something works in another game, adapting it to your game is a good idea.
Honestly, I couldn't agree more. Put it much better. Is there's something to be said for adopting an objectively better system. Like personally, I think universal spell lists are objectively better than a different specific spell list to each different class, depending on the class themselves. Like that's one of the big ones that people are saying, oh, they stole the primal divine arcane from Pathfinder, when I just think it's a better system. And also those terms were in 4th edition before anything.
They were in 4th edition, so they easily could have come up with that on their own. And might it have been also based on looking at how it was done in PF2? Maybe not. Either way, it was a good idea.
Yeah, and honestly, I live by this code. It feels like I say this at least once a month on the internet, but my favorite saying of all time is good artists borrow, great artists steal. Like if you want to make great art, you are going to steal the techniques and things that the greatest artists do. You twist them just enough to make them your own. But when something works, you use what works. I use the same editing software as a lot of other YouTubers because Adobe Premiere is the strongest one on the market right now. I'm not copying them because I'm using the same program.
Yeah. But I don't know. Mark's in a unique position that if they come up, well, you didn't do 3-action economy, that's Steven. But if you like, what did you do? You did critical failures, critical
I
successes.
did the 4 degrees of success, but
Right, 4
if
degrees.
anything, they have moved farther away.
Yeah,
from
Yeah,
that's
they
not
did.
happening.
They did. But my point is, like, if you see, oh, we're coming up with the 4 degrees of successfulness, and you're like, oh, come on. It's like,
I mean, unifying the spell list was also something I pushed for, but also everybody else on the design team agreed. So
yes,
like,
I forgot.
In the immediate meeting, I'm like, I think we should do that, and they were like, yes, or
There was
like, I was already considering that we should do that. So that's another reason why I was pretty convinced it could be possible that they did it on their own at WotC, is because it's like pretty much anyone who looks at the mess that is having, especially in Pathfinder First, like if you lived through being a designer on the late stage books for Pathfinder First Edition, where it's like, we're going to do a spells chapter. It's like, okay, congratulations. So how many pages? I'm thinking 20. All right, well, prepare for like the first 8 to 9 to be spell lists for the 19 different classes that have their own unique spell lists. And now you're going to get half of that. A little more than half of that will be the actual spells.
Well, what I was going to say, what I find interesting is that D&D is now, well, it's 8 years old. So say they designed it like 10, 11 years ago. And I know they did a lot of public, play testing.
D&D Next or whatever.
Yeah, D&D Next. And then Pathfinder 2nd came out, and it's funny to see. I'm curious to see how many things are like, ooh, those are all good ideas. Like we should integrate those into D&D, One D&D. And that's a perfect example, like having the spell lists restricted to classes versus schools is one of those. Of course you do it. I don't know why they didn't think of that to begin with. And also, there was so many announcements in that announcement, like what you described. Like there was just a lot of things they snuck in there that they did. It wasn't just like, oh, here's new One D&D, and here's like their one playtest document. That's like, no, they're doing a lot, and that was another big announcement, is that they just was a first level feats. And now people are like, first level feats, what's that? And I was like, oh boy, here we go. And people are like, are they going to be doing feat trees? So my prediction is I don't think they're going to do feat trees. What do you think, Mark? I think they're going to do feats that automatically increase in power over time.
So they have come out a little bit in their announcement about that. They specifically stated that low-level feats are going to be primarily role play and development focused, which is already not super true with what they've released. But so what they specifically said is low level feats are not going to have numerical bonuses attached to them, but higher level ones will, and that makes me nervous. That's one thing I love about PF2 is no matter how high level the feat you're looking at, maybe it gives you an extra attack or reduces a penalty, but no Pathfinder feat says gain plus X to attack rolls.
True, but I have a feeling. Oh, here we go. Ollie. Another 5. I keep saying pounds. Euros. Again, I don't want to keep saying pounds. Do you think they can fix CR in counterbalance? Or is it, for example, their bounded accuracy so flat that it's unfixable? They will not fix it.
I think universal and counterbalance is a myth.
I think you need, the math has to be so tight. I mean, Mark and I could probably talk about this for days, and Mark could talk about it for years. It's like the math has to be so tight for CR and counterbalance to even come close to being accurate, and their math it's just not tight. If anything, monsters, since they can crit now, monsters are going to be even easier. I mean, it's like they're really going full superhero. I mean, they're really making that if you're playing D&D, you were just going to be wading through monsters.
Yeah, but regardless,
I have a different take on that.
Okay, I'm curious.
Than the two of you.
Okay,
so I think that you're both right, but I also somewhat disagree.
Okay,
and I'll start with like, Nonat is 100% right that universal and counterbalance is a myth. Yes. But I think that as a response is a response that we shouldn't make as our first response towards will people improve or fix in counterbalance, because while it's true that you can never have it universally balanced, you can certainly have systems that are close.
You can try.
And you can have systems that are far.
Right.
And it is very, very worthwhile to try to make one that is close.
Yes.
And I think Pathfinder 2nd Edition is close. And most other D&D likes that I've played, including Pathfinder 1st Edition, are not close. Yes. So
yeah. Like and part of that comes from the bounded accuracy. When a level 3 character could theoretically land a hit on a Baylor, and the Baylor could theoretically miss all their attacks,
right? Like,
balance is, you can balance it, but it's going to be very wide. Whereas what a lot of people complain about with the scaling math of PF2, a lot of people hate that a goblin can't hit a level 12 PC, but it allows much tighter encounters against same level foes.
Yeah. By the way,
here's the thing about that. You could balance a bounded accuracy, and you could make a bounded accuracy system that is as balanced as PF2. You could even make a bounded accuracy system if you want. It's a little more balanced for encounter building than PF2, and you just know that the higher level monsters are not worth that much more than the lower level ones are. Although it's a little weird because they have high hit points and damage, they can wind up like sitting around for a long time. But to do that, you have to get rid of other peripherals that are in the system that are what's throwing bounce off. Things like, there's another D4 from Bless. There's this other D6 from here. Here's a first level spell that makes the enemy reroll and then gives me advantage, and things like that. You have to be very, very careful about those as part of encounter building. And then you have to do a lot of mathematical modeling to figure out what the actual growth rate, polynomial or exponential, is when you level up a monster compared to how much XP it should be worth to truly state how strong it is. And like you said, Nonat, a Balor versus a lower level character needs to, in Pathfinder 2nd Edition, a level 20 Balor versus a level 3 party, right, would be like
impossible, honestly.
It would be, I think, the XP that it would be worth is 15,360. Which is 15 levels or something like that.
That's interesting, actually. I've never thought about that. But if you gain 2,000 experience, do you gain 2 levels or no? Or do you gain 1,000 and then adjust the remaining experience accordingly?
Yeah, so that it depends. Like, it talks about it doesn't really, there are no encounters that could possibly do this because it's not really worth 15,000 because the chart just says what are you doing, it doesn't give a number. But if you extended the math of the table, it would be worth like 15,000 experience points.
So what you're saying is I should make a video about how to go from level 1 to 20 in one encounter.
You would go for level 3 to 18 or something wild like that, just if you actually beat the Belar at level 3. But the point is that in a hypothetical as balanced as PF2 encounter builder for bounded accuracy, it would not give 15,000 if you beat a Balor at level 3. It would be worth less. It would probably still be worth an obscene amount because it's probably still very difficult to do, because the Balor's hits will probably do a lot of damage, and it probably has so many hit points that you have to spend like 50 rounds, but maybe not because of the save or lose spells that are in 5e. But
so a few things real quick, because enough of the Balors. We have a lot of people watching. If you like 50 likes, we're making Onat do something silly.
Oh, it's like you're using me for clout.
I'm always using you for clout. You can use us for clout. I don't think you're going to get anywhere with that. But we got, I see the likes going up. Got to get them likes up.
If we get to 50, maybe 50. Nonat has to do an impersonation of a level 3 character and a Balor, like having a confrontation and do both sides as both being the level 3 character and then the Balor as they're
that's right,
bantering with each other. Since he's used that as an example before in at least one other video.
Nonat loves the act too. Nonat is a thespian.
The Balor versus the low level character is like one of his favorites. So we'll do like a skit for
Yeah.
that.
We could get a skit. He's looking for his dog. He's having his dog play the
No,
bell.
I was looking for these little peepers that turn your hand into a puppet.
Oh, okay. Oh, that one. I know that one. That's like, yeah, you can find that. Because I think we're gonna get 50 pretty damn quick.
Oh man.
And don't forget, like, subscribe. If you have any questions, we're gonna answer them. You see that the second a super chat comes in, I stop what I'm doing and I answer that super chat.
I mean, after you finish your thought.
I don't even finish it always. I'm just like, I don't even remember what I was talking about before. I will say though, this is interesting, and from a game point of view, there's only 2 tabletop role-playing games that I'm aware of. There's probably others that are combat focused and balanced. Now that's the thing that people always seem to be surprised about, is how much combat is in D&D, which is also why people are like, and why is it so poorly balanced considering how much combat's in the game? The only 2 I've ever seen that are very well balanced is 4th edition Dungeons and Dragons and Pathfinder 2nd edition. And the interesting thing about 4th edition, and I played a 4th edition campaign from 1st level to 20th, and the combat was very well balanced, if a little underpowered, and it was incredibly boring. And in video games, that happens all the time. In fact, if you come out with a perfectly balanced system, it is excruciatingly boring. And I think it has to do with, there's a lot of reasons, but for psychology of like, you know, if things are exactly what you expect them to be, people aren't surprised, and they don't get you know, they lose interest, and they just lose, you know, the surprise element, the expectation of something unusual.
So the comparison
happening.
that I use in that situation is it should be like blackjack. If you are playing blackjack 100% perfectly, it's like 0.5% unbalanced, which would be amazing for a video game.
Right.
So if perfect play provides a balanced experience, that's great, because it means you can feel all of your mistakes. You can see what you could be doing better. And sure, once you learn the game, it's, you know, you've mastered it, but it gives you something to learn.
Right. But where the secret comes in is breaking the game, but in the rule set. And that's where the monsters come in. And that's where feats and abilities for classes come in. So you have the basic rule set, and then you have monsters who constantly are like, okay, I attack you 4 times this round. You're like, wait a second, you can't do that. You're not supposed to attack 4 times this round. And they're like, well, that's what the monster can do, because they have a special ability. And that's where the fun comes in, is that they break the rules just a little bit, not too much that it's unbalanced, but just enough that it makes it interesting. And then the PCs obviously get the same ability. It's that they can break the rules because I'm a fighter, so I get, you know, really good attacks, and I'm a magic user, I can use magic and so forth, and I can heal, and, you know, that's their ways of, quote, breaking the rules. So coming up with a system that is balanced and allows people to, quote, break the rules and all that, it's very hard. It's very, 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 very hard. It's nearly impossible to do. And my take is, I really don't think D&D, they care that much. I think they're more about story and experience and feeling than true balance. And a good example is their Witchlight game, the Witchlight module book that just came out. That's the one with the amusement parks and the fantasy. They heavily marketed that you can play that entire game without ever being in combat once.
Well, and this is reflected by the D&D community as well. Yeah. You know, you look at a lot of the power gamers or the war gamers of 20 years ago, they're not really playing 5th edition. The people playing 5th edition are the ones who are sharing stories with their friends. They're talking about getting to play their favorite original character in this story with their friends. It is very much a cooperative storytelling game, which is, ironically, I wouldn't call it Gygax's original vision for the game, but people have been calling D&D cooperative storytelling for well over 15, 20 years.
Yeah, and if you look at the new VTT, everyone said the same thing. Everyone had the exact same reaction. They were like, damn, that thing looks amazing. And the answer is like, yeah, it looks amazing. And I guarantee that's why they're not doing Roll20 or Foundry or any of these other VTTs, because they don't want it to look like. They don't want it to look like the table. They want it to look like this amazing fantasy video game. I'd almost say meta universe.
Yeah.
They're going to outdo freaking Facebook before Facebook, because they're going to. This can be used. I see them using this not as just a role playing game, but hey, let's have our meeting inside D&D Foundry.
Right. Imagine if they can render a fully 3D tiled explorable Waterdeep.
Yeah.
Your party can drag their tokens around Waterdeep.
Yeah.
You can meet up in the tavern and just talk in Discord.
Oh yeah, I guarantee this is the game aspect is going to almost be secondary. It literally will be a secondary part of this. It'll be like, oh yeah, and then D&D will just become D&D, which will turn into a lot of things. And this is, if they're not making billions, not billion, but billions of dollars a year off this brand, I will be stunned.
Same.
And the rules and balance and actions, and that's all going to be secondary. I hate to say it.
That's going to open room for games like Pathfinder to grow and absorb part of the community, because there's going to be a part of the community that doesn't like that direction. There's going to be people who like the crunchy rules, who like the directions, and they're going to look for other games. Super chat.
Wow. $5. It's been bugging me for a bit, so I'm going to ask to break the ice. What are those 2 new Eldamon that are appearing in the overlay? Let us know. Hey, Mark. Did you see that we had some new Eldamon?
Yeah,
on the
I noticed
overlay?
that. I mean, we actually had the iguana. It was in one of the newsletters like a week or so ago. I noticed you slipping that in, and nobody commented.
I know.
But yeah, we've got 2 more of the fire Eldamon there. There's a goat and an iguana.
No, the goat's life. The goat's life.
Oh, yeah, right. It's the life goat. Of course, it's not a fire one.
Well, because there's a lot of red in it. It has a lot of red in it.
It's life because of the idea of like a scapegoat, and like offers life by protecting others and taking things on itself. So there's a life goat and a fire iguana that we've totally got there. And yeah, we're gonna actually, you noticed it the second time Steven put it up, but we're going to have an update where we talk a little bit about them as one of the Kickstarter updates.
Yeah, we have new artwork coming in. Basically, the artist, who's the same one who did their Dragon book, he is actually, it's fun. He's doing them, but then he said, hey, he was getting married, so he took off like 2 months.
That's one reason we didn't have any other than the starting ones for a while.
Yeah, we didn't have any new ones for a while. But he came back and he says, hey, can I have my wife do some of the Eldamon too? And I was like, sure. And she actually did those 2, and you can see there's subtle, if you're really careful, there are subtle differences. But I don't want to say they're better, but I do like hers because they're a little cuter in some ways. I mean, there's almost, unless you really know what you're looking for, that came up, you could barely tell the difference between the new ones and the originals, but they definitely have a bit more of the cutesy, like oversized heads and things like that than the original. But yeah, we're gonna have the same artist doing pretty much all of them, and they're starting to come in, and as we get them in, we'll start showing them off to people. And don't forget, Kickstarter.rollforcombat.com, and you too can summon a goat to attack Nonat.
Why would you attack
or
me?
to like a life goat? It'll help protect.
Oh my god, we have 70 people watching. We only need 50 likes, people.
We're close to 50 likes. Don't you want to see Nonat being forced to do a skit where he's a Balor and a level 3 person who's gonna beat the Balor?
I know.
Send help.
So
I'm here against my will.
you are so not against your will.
I know.
You made this decision, and now you have to live with it.
That's right. You are living with it. So I'm curious, Chad, what are you guys worried or excited about for One D&D? Because I see both. It's funny. I've seen some of these videos saying, oh, One D&D, we're all looking forward to it, and it's not as bad as I thought it was going to be. And then I see another video saying, oh my God, this is so much worse than I thought it would be. And I'm like, wow, people are all over the place. There's no consensus.
I thought that like they made things that fit with your predictions and were like, pretty good small quality of life changes, given that they're doing a smaller shift for the new edition and marketing it as not being a new edition. Like it's pretty expected. It seems like a pretty good direction.
Yeah. What I am, well, I've been watching them closely because it's like, it's fascinating that they decided to not come up with new rule sets, but instead to come up with worlds and adventures, which is really stunning. Like, that would not be the direction I think anyone would normally want to go, because usually they don't sell as well. But they've kept the rules pretty much intact for almost 10 years now. They barely have changed them.
Well, sort of, because what they do though is that the new releases sometimes just replace one of the original rules, right? Like in Xanathar's, where it's like use this encounter builder instead of the one in the Dungeon Master's Guide.
But they've only released one new class.
No, that's true. So they've actually released patches for some of the base rules more so than they've released like certain amount of expansions like classes.
Yeah, and I think they're going to stick with that. They're going to smooth out the game. They're going to reorganize the books. As they said, they said they're going to do that. They're going to reorganize them so they work as digital books, as digital content. I think they're going to go first for digital and then worry about the layout of the book. And these are people who think about it, they've refused to release anything on PDF ever, and they never will. Because A, they don't want PDFs out there, and B, they want people to subscribe to D&D Beyond and to get everything from D&D Beyond. And everyone does. D&D Beyond is phenomenally popular. In fact, everyone I know who plays D&D uses D&D Beyond. Do you use D&D Beyond, Nonan?
I used it for one campaign that I joined halfway through only because they were already using D&D Beyond. But no, otherwise I do not use D&D Beyond.
Yeah. It's interesting.
I just usually use a PDF character sheet in the book.
So Ollie writes, I'm worried they're going to get too into microtransactions and subscription fees. Yeah, well, guess
welcome
what?
21st century.
Well, I know. Welcome to the world of everything. I was just talking about this. So I'm in software development, and they are all going to subscription models, and they love it. I talk to these people. First of all, it's guaranteed money. Second, they don't have to worry about piracy. Piracy is pretty much gone from these things because you can't pirate it, and they able to control everything. They don't have to worry about selling it in stores. Remember those days when you have to go to CompUSA and buy software? Oh, that was funny. It's like they control every aspect of it. They get almost 100% of the profit. People forget they have subscriptions all the time. They have subscription models. They charge them a small amount. The whole world is going subscription model. Everything is going subscription model. Did you see that if you want heated seats in Korea for your BMW, you have to buy a subscription for it?
What?
Did you hear about that? They're testing that out.
That's insane.
They're testing that out.
So isn't that just renting the seat then, basically?
And this is how it works, is that they're testing it, and I believe it's in South Korea, that it was like BMW. It was either Mercedes or BMW, that if you want heated seats or heating steering wheel, it will cost you like $5 a month, or you can unlock it permanently for like $300. Now, here's the thing: it already has it. It's already built in.
You just can't turn it on.
You just can't turn it on unless you unlock it. And you know why? You know why they're doing that?
Why is that?
Same reason that the number one complaint in the video game world, they hated GameStop because of used game sales. They hated used game sales because they only made money on the game once, which is why they all went to the subscription models. They all went to downloadables. They all went to all these models, and now you don't hear about it ever. Like, this is what all game companies used to talk about, like, for the last 15 years until recently. They don't have to worry about used games. They don't, because everything is a subscription model. Everything is games as service. So D&D is going to be a games as service. It's
MMOs have been since 2005.
Yeah, everything's going to go as a service, and D&D is going to go the exact same way. Now, they can say, well, you only buy what you want. By the way, thanks, Dead Phoenix. That's a great name, by the way. That is just that the economy of books is so bad. It's like, okay, we make a book, and we're going to sell the book for $60. We got to print the book. The book costs a couple of bucks to print. We got to sell it. We'll sell it to Barnes and Noble for 50 to 60% off, because that's what you have to do. Maybe since they're big, maybe they only sell for 40% off. But the point is they have to sell it to them for half price. So we'll say they sell a book to Barnes and Noble for $30, and maybe it costs them.
And it probably costs them what, like $9 to print it?
No. That book is they print so many, it's probably like 4 to 5 at most.
So do you think companies make more, like especially TTRPG companies, think they make more money off of selling a PDF than a physical copy?
Oh yeah. 100%. I make more money making.
So they
selling
spend
PDFs,
$5. They make $30. So they make $25 a unit. Not counting, did they have to pay to ship it to Barnes and Noble?
Yeah, usually.
Yeah.
So
shipping containers have gone up in price by I think like about $1 per.
It's a lot.
In an increase. The dollar per is just how much it went up from the stuff, and it already cost a certain amount. Yeah. So you're essentially making like out of that 60, they're making like maybe 20 some, and then they have to pay for art, and they actually pay for their staff like actual like rates in the industry that are higher than other people by double. And so like it's expensive. So I see what Steven's saying about books not being a great proposition. And then there's secondhand books, right? So people buy it at half price books after it's resold.
Yeah, and now that all goes away. First of all, they're selling right to the consumer. They don't worry about printing. They don't have to worry about writing these things 18 months, 2 years ahead of time. They don't have to worry about going to trade shows. They don't have to worry about going to Toy Fair. I mean,
so you don't think there's going to be any physical one D&D product?
I guarantee there will be, but they're only going to do it as necessary, and it will end up being like 5% of their sales, if that, over time. It's going to be such a small percentage of their sales, it'll be like a joke. It's sort of like Netflix. They still do DVDs. Right,
you could get them to send you the videos, but like nobody did that compared to the streaming.
Well, the funny thing is, I remember because I joined Netflix way back when did it first come out? Like 2004 or something. I just had a coincidence. I had a lot of my friends who lived in where they San Mateo or something. They're actually in the same city as Netflix, so all my friends had Netflix, and they were like, "Oh my god, did you know this thing called Netflix?" And so we all subscribed to it. And I remember watching one of the sales meetings where they were talking about Netflix earnings, and they were saying, "Oh, our future." Why we're called Netflix is we're going to be doing everything over the internet. And I was like, come on, man. No way. It was like 2007. I'm like, no way. Are you're streaming all that content on the internet? That's insane. That can't be done. And I always think about that. Actually, I was so stunned when I heard that. And then, well, they did it. They did it. It's all in the internet. It's like, remember they used to send out DVDs? Remember you used to get DVDs in the mail? Remember that was a whole thing? Probably not a lot of people remember that, but I do. And it was like, that was like the cool thing to do. We're going to be like, remember when you used to buy books and you used to sit around a table and play D&D, and we used to like have little minis and we like roll dice? Remember that 15 years ago? Yep. How quaint. How silly of us.
People laugh.
Let me pull up my phone and start playing D&D with you right now. It's like...
people laughed when Futurama, which takes place 1,000 years in the future, made jokes like they would find an old book and they'd be like, what does this thing do? You can't even scroll it. That's gonna be reality. Give it 200 years.
Not even 200 years. I say 15 years. They're gonna be like, you want books? You can buy books. They're all gonna be $80, $100 special editions. That's all they're going to do. They're not even going to do regular books. It's like, oh, we're coming out with I just happen to have this next to me, Legendary Kingdoms, but if you want the online version, that's $50. But if you want the book, that's $100 for the special edition.
The price of printing is going to go up because demand is going to go down, so they need to recoup losses. Yeah, it's going to be horrible.
Yeah. And I know people want to buy things like DVDs are a good example, is that a lot of people, this is a whole other aspect of psychology, is that people would buy DVDs of movies they like and they would put them on the shelf. And I had a friend of mine who must have had like 500 DVDs. And I was like, dude, have you ever watched any of these? And he's like, no, he doesn't watch. He watched like none of them. But they were a representation of him and aspect of him. And by buying a movie that he really liked and enjoyed, he could put it on the shelf and show people, A, I really like that movie. B, I'm closer to that movie because I own aspects of it. Now it's part of me. And it's also announced that, like, oh, yes, I like the Lord of the Rings trilogy. I like Star Wars. I like these things. It's very tribal. And that is probably why they will still continue to do books and stuff.
I think that ties back into something that we said earlier on the show about those special edition monopolies, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
People don't actually play those special edition
San
monopolies.
Diego
No one does. No, in fact, yeah. So this is something they teach in. I actually learned this in college. This is how long ago it was. Is that 1 out of every 2 homes, and this is back in the 80s, 90s, had a Monopoly set. Now think about that. 50%. That's insane, by the way. That's like a television. You know, it's like 50% of all Americans have a Monopoly set in their house. So how do you make people buy more Monopoly? Because it's like, okay, it's the most popular board game in the United States. Everyone has it, but once you have it, you don't need another one. So what do? You brand it. And that was the smartest thing they ever did. And they still have it. Hey, by the way, there's D&D Monopoly if you want. And do they really care if it works? No. But it looks cool. How many people buy those D&D Monopoly sets, open them up, look at them, and see all the pieces, and close it up, and put it on the shelf, and never open it ever again? It's like, that's exactly. Heck, they did it with Clue. And Clue is way more popular overseas than it is in the United States. Cluedo. It's
Cluedo, yeah.
Cluedo. It's very popular overseas. They've done that with Clue. I have the Simpsons Clue set. Let me tell you how many times I've played that. 0. But I have it. It looks cool. The pieces are like little things from the Simpsons, you know. I was smart enough to not get suckered into Monopoly, though. I was like, oh, look at all these cool Monopoly sets. I will not buy them. Yeah. But I do know what they're doing, and I applaud them. Sort of where I'm at
is I'll see it on the shelf, and I'll go, that's cool. I like that. I'm going to leave that there.
Yeah, right. I'm sitting there. I'm like, will I ever use this? Do I need it? No. But damn, that's cool. I'll look up an unboxing video on the internet, and then I'll be done with it forever of my entire life.
Good news, everyone. We're at 52 likes.
No, Nat. Go find your eyes. Go find your
I don't know where they are, but I have a backup plan.
Okay, we got a backup plan.
All right. Hold on. Let me just.
I'm playing Monopoly only as rules is written. By the way, so 99% of people play Monopoly incorrectly. I played, which is ironic. This is because it actually is a very good game. If you play the digital version of Monopoly, like on your phone, which plays 100% accurate, the game is brutal. It is so hard, and it's actually kind of fun because the only way you can make money is by, after you have all the hotels, is by selling, hotels and houses. And so that you can collect rent on them. So when everything is taken on the board, that's the big part of the game, is just making deals with other people. And that actually is pretty interesting. It's a very different game because everyone plays, I guess I'd call it the soft version of Monopoly. Because Monopoly as written is brutally hard and really cutthroat. It's also the best game because the only way you win is by knocking everyone out. And isn't that fun to play a 2 to 3 hour game where someone gets killed and you got nothing to do for the next 2 hours because I watch everyone else play Monopoly? What a great game that is. It is a terrible game, by the way. No, now, what do you got?
All right.
Oh my God, he's starting already. Everything's
my
breaking.
Sword fell.
Your sword's falling. Your earphones are coming off.
It's all right. That's just an average day.
He's not in the frame anymore. Oh my God, world is colliding.
Goodbye. All right. I call this Party of 2 plus a Baylor.
Oh,
hi there. I'm a level 2 fighter.
Oh, wait, I got to move up the frame a little. You're so off there. There we go.
I'm a level 2 ranger. We're going on an adventure. The guild didn't tell us what we're fighting, but it should be around here somewhere. Hello. What level are you, Mr. Baylor?
The other one is running away. He's so scared. He just left.
team.
And seed. And then that's even better. Cookies as PCs.
Yeah, that way if you kill them as the GM, you get to eat their character.
That is a great. So I played a homebrew version of a BattleTech type game using Legos. And it was one of the greatest BattleTech like miniature combat games ever, because as you're you build it, and then as they kept dying you take off the pieces, and it was really well balanced. They also did a very smart thing, is that the more pieces that came off of you got weaker but faster. So it actually was a perfectly balanced game. I remember it got right to the end. It was very, very well done. I wish it was some guy who just made it too. It was just like a homebrew. I was like, I always think about that game. I'm like, man, I wonder if that ever came out, because that game was good. And it was fun because you just use Lego. And one of the best games I also ever saw, it was in Dragon Magazine, is they made a combat game using Silly Putty. Play-Doh, using Play-Doh. And then the Play-Doh, you would like, there's actually a Kickstarter, I think, for that too. You would like take your Play-Doh and then actually combat and like break them and then like smush them together and make armies. That stuff's fun. That stuff's fun. Oh, using peanut butter cup miniatures as your miniatures and eating your kills. I've seen people do that with like M&Ms.
I've seen that with Starburst because they're completely wrapped.
That's fair. Yeah, if you keep the peanut butter cups like in the foil, that would work pretty well.
Oh my god, you guys are like, gotta keep it in the foil. No, man, you gotta keep it out of the foil, and you get some dirt on it, got some cat hair. It's like, well, then you really don't want to go down, because then you're gonna end up eating that guy.
You're eating what you're killing.
Well, then maybe you start saying, I'm not killing him, you kill him. I don't want
players into pacifists.
Oh, did we make Oni?
We did. We're $34 over. We just unlocked Oni double Oni.
Yay.
We were like $106 from it for like most of the stream.
Thank you, people. Yes,
we did it.
We did it.
Doubling those Oni. That means that we're going to get some of those really obscure Pathfinder First Edition Oni in there that people asked about it almost right away. They're like, what about Nogitsune? What about Yamabushi Tengu? And I was like, those are kind of obscure. We probably aren't going to have a chance to get them unless we double. I see. So we might be able to get those.
There's a lot of people watching. I mean, I can keep talking and I'm not going anywhere. And NoNet has nothing to do, so he's going to be here for the next 5 hours. So when we get to 100 likes, we're going to make him
session with four corners tonight.
We're going to make him eat a casserole instead. It's gonna be him.
I don't even have the fixins for a casserole.
And then he's gonna be like, I am an ogre. Who's over here? And he's gonna be like eating the whole casserole, pretending they're all little minions. If you have questions, let me know, because we will answer all of your questions about One D&D 100% accurately. Because I actually think everything we've said will be.
We can't be sure that these.
I am
100%
sure.
Your previous ones were 100% accurate, so we can't.
100%.
We can't.
100%.
We can't dismiss the possibility that you will be 100% accurate again.
By the way,
you were last time.
That's what I was before we get interrupted by NoNat's amazing ogre eating cookie man. They are co-branding Magic the Gathering like crazy now. Have you noticed that? Mm-hmm. There is a Doctor Who version, the D&D version of Magic, most popular set ever in history. Mm-hmm.
Like, I believe it.
They are going to go crazy, and I think it's going to be a long time before we start seeing that in D&D. I think we're a good safe 15 years off before you start seeing that. But I guarantee you're going to see Drizzt. I guarantee you're going to see... Well, that's all they have, really. They have Drizzt right now, and Catabear, and Wolfgar, and Battlehammer, right? Yes. I've actually read every book, and I'm rereading them all. I love the Drizzt books. So I love Ari Salvatore.
Who's your favorite character in the Drizzt books?
Who's my favorite character?
Is it Jarlaxle? He seems like
Jarlaxle's pretty damn cool. He seems
like you share certain like viewpoints with him.
The thing with Jarl Axel is he's always complaining how he's not the best.
That's true.
And like he's always like, oh, and he's always like so he can't get over the fact that Drizzt is better than him.
No, that's Artemis and Treri.
Oh, right. Sorry.
Jarlaxle's just the guy who's like
Jarlaxle
the mercenary
leads...
who gets all the money and he has like a million daggers.
Yeah. He's the bald. I got him confused. Sorry, you're right. He's the bald drow, who runs. Got the name of their group, but he is
the Bregan Darth or whatever, the mercenary group.
Yeah, the mercenary group. I love him, man. He's probably my favorite character. First of all,
I knew it.
Well, he dresses.
Even though Steven couldn't remember the name, but it was his favorite.
No, well, you know why? Because they also, I have this thing where I can't read names and pronounce them correctly in my head. So, like, you can say a name and I won't know it's the same name. It's just like
that makes sense. Like you said, Catabear instead of Catti-brie and
Catti-brie,
right? It makes sense.
Yeah, but you know what? As someone who worked on the Harry Potter website, Voldemort is incorrectly pronounced by the entire world. It is not Voldemort.
Is it pronounced French like with a more?
It's Voldemort. That is how
it doesn't have an E at the end.
It's Voldemort. That's how you're supposed to pronounce it.
Yeah, shouldn't it have an E then?
If it had an E, then you would say the T. Yeah.
It's Voldemort.
If it was French.
Because it's Dumbledore and Voldemort. They're supposed to rhyme. Oh. But if you look it up, she actually says like everyone pronounces it wrong. And in fact, there's a big thing. Stephen King wrote a whole thing about that. Like she's very into names, and like Voldemort and Dumbledore are the opposites of each other. Mm-hmm. If you look at the lettering and everything, they actually are opposites. She does that a lot in her books. Stephen King reviewed all the Harry Potter books for the New York Times. Read his reviews. He has insights you've never seen. It is amazing, his reviews, because he shows you like how good she was as a wordsmith and like using words to convey concept. Really well done, actually. Say what you want about her, but her writing was really good. Anyhow, so you're going to be seeing... I am curious about the D&D movie and if those characters are going to break through in any way to make them like...
They'll probably get some magic cards.
Yeah,
like
but
commanders.
It's like they need to... Well, that's why they're doing Dragonlance, because they need more characters. They need to get more characters. And that's
Race Flynn from Dragonlance has always been a popular character that people like. And
they're trying to get Boo in there and Minsk, which obviously
they're trying to bring Boo and Minsk back in full. Well, not Minsk as much, but Boo for sure.
Yeah, I mean,
Boo's
now
like
that they
have Spelljammer, they actually have the giant space hamster.
That's so interesting. So they I don't know how long ago they did this. So they confirmed that Minsk isn't just crazy. That Boo is actually a miniature giant space hamster.
Yes.
I mean,
maybe.
I don't know, but they have giant space hamsters presumably in Spelljammer. I mean, they originally did. I heard people say that a lot of the stuff from the original is not in the new update, but
so, and just to give you an idea of how marketing drives gaming, and I think I mentioned this before. So for those who play Magic the Gathering, you have what are they called? Not the Spell Lords, I forgot their name. The commander cards, like the big cards. What are they called? Chad, help me out. I have a brain fart here.
Are they commander cards?
No, not the commander cards. The actual
Planeswalkers.
Planeswalkers. Right.
I couldn't remember.
They were told they had to make it because they couldn't do movies or TV shows without having like characters that were named.
Correct. They went to make TV shows and all the studios said, you have no characters. We can't do anything with this. So they literally invented Planeswalkers.
Like you could easily imagine a Netflix series like the ones for League of Legends or Dota for Magic, but before they had Planeswalkers that everybody knew, that would have been very difficult.
Yeah, and you need characters, and I guarantee you're going to start seeing that a lot more. I'm kind of stunned they didn't really do that. I mean, they do that a little bit in D&D, but I think they've been doing a pretty bad job because they have like, first of all these names are unpronounceable. Like every single one of these names they use, like they're like Z's and V's and X's, and I'm like, come on,
with
dudes.
apostrophes.
Ugh, they still don't have two. They only have one because no one can break that rule. Not even WotC, I think, breaks that rule. Mark.
No, WotC sometimes has more
Really?
apostrophes.
Even they break the rule. Well, that shows you how impossible they are to pronounce.
Kaizo's rule was 1 apostrophe per career for a person.
Oh, per career?
Yes.
Oh my god. Which is why when you wrote your sample names, you had one in there that had like 15 apostrophes as a sample
that
name.
was partially an homage to that Paizo rule, and also partially because Paizo would have never allowed an ancestry whose actual ancestry name had an apostrophe in it for that very same reason. And the ancestry has an apostrophe. It's G apostrophe M-A-Y-U-N.
Yeah, well, we didn't come up
I
with
just
that.
assumed that they liked apostrophes a lot, so I put apostrophes in the sample names.
Well, Phoenix Black is writing that Critical Role is successful and D&D is not. I guarantee that Hasbro saw how successful Critical Role was, saw how successful Arcane was for Netflix, which is freaking amazing. That is an amazing show. And they're sitting there going, where's ours? Where's our characters? Why don't we have an animated show? Why aren't we in the public zeitgeist?
Like, we also have a Jace. We could have had an animated show with a Jace.
Was that?
Well, because isn't there a Jace in both Magic the Gathering and in League of Legends?
Yes.
And he's in Arcane. So it's like, we have a Jace. We could have had a show with our Jace.
Right, but but the point is like they have the game, they have the name, they have the brand, they have Vecna, which, by the way, I heard some like school teachers talking about Vecna the other day, and I'm just like, wow. I couldn't believe, like, what? Am I on planet Earth? It was like, am I seeing normal people talking about Vecna? Like, I almost had to say, do you know what that's from? Do you even know who that is? It's like, I'm like, oh my, what is going on here?
Of course they know what it's from. It's from Stranger Things.
That is right. It's from Stranger Things. It's
the thing from Stranger Things, right?
It is the thing from Stranger Things. Just like, WotC invented Dungeons and Dragons, right? You know that. They invented it. They came up with the idea.
Really?
And
I
everything.
thought it was like a new thing that they created in Stranger Things specifically for the Netflix series.
I know, but the thing is that they must be dying because it's like, oh man,
are you sure Critical Role didn't invent D&D?
Well, they could have invented it too. I've heard that WotC made D&D, but Critical Role made it popular. In fact, if it wasn't for Critical Role, D&D would have been dead.
It wouldn't be dead. It wouldn't be nearly where it is now.
I'm being sarcastic. I'm being sarcastic. I should do a sarcastic voice. Do you know that if
Steven, yours was less ridiculous than the thing that
that's the problem.
So
is that people
therefore he couldn't tell whether you were joking.
I know, it's almost. And the thing that bothers me so much is that he was playing Pathfinder and they changed to D&D. Oh, can you imagine? That's like the alternate universe where everyone's talking about Pathfinder and D&D's in the dustbin. Which actually happened back in 4th edition, if you remember. I would go to these conventions when 4th edition first came out, and we're talking about small conventions. And WotC would be there, and Chris Perkins, and I'm trying to remember, Wes would be there, like all these people, like some of the top people. And I'm like, man, what do you guys? Not Wes. Randy would be there. There would be all these top people. I'm like, and they'd literally be demoing. They'd be demoing Dungeons and Dragons for people. And I was like, and this would be a small convention. We're not talking about Gen Con. We're talking about like, some convention on Long Island. I was like, wow. And I would just sit around and talk with them. It was like nothing. It was great.
It's something that feels so holier than thou about Wizards not even having a presence at Gen Con.
Oh, they don't. Yeah.
Exactly. Like, I know business-wise they don't need to, but them not even being there at all just sounds like they're telling us we don't need to be. We know we don't need to be there.
Nope. They have no presence. They used to. The Sagamore used to be all D&D. I loved it too. It was so much fun. And they would have a castle there, and then Pathfinder took it over, and then D&D was on the floor, like in an area, And I played D&D with this GM. He actually was pretty famous. He died recently. He was blind. He was very, very interesting GM. He ran the whole session. He was completely blind, and he would use a reader. And it was the most impressive, one of the most memorable sessions I've ever had, because I was just stunned that this guy was literally, you talk about theater of the mind, like this was theater of their mind plus 10. It was really a very...
Did they just use like a dice generator, or like a verbal one?
Yeah, he had a verbal dice generator. He was very famous in the industry, and everyone knew about him. And he had all the books like on a reader, and he would have to like scan through it. It was really fascinating to play with him. And that was like 10 years ago or something. Now they're not even there. And the thing is, if you look at the Gen Con book, it actually has like the official passage of something like, I have actually the book right next to me, something like, like where people can celebrate and play Dungeons and Dragons. Like it's actually still like
people reacted to that.
Yeah, people. It actually is like still in their mantra that D&D is there. There was less D&D games than Pathfinder.
Yeah, no, that got some social media trending, because they on their website they posted like, we've got hundreds of D&D games,
right,
as well as other tabletop games.
Yeah, I know. And it's like, yeah. And it's like, is D&D here in any capacity? No, not at all.
There's some third-party developers.
Thing right beneath that was like, spot this next message was brought to you by Pathfinder, who have paid money to have it put in there. They're also Pathfinder games.
Yeah, pretty much. Like page after page of Pathfinder ads. D&D doesn't even bother.
Yeah.
They don't have to go to the party. But you know what? That's even happening in video games. I went to E3 almost every year. Oh my God. Oh, E3. E3 in the day. God, I have videos that are so incriminating of my life at E3. E3 was...
Maybe keep those to yourself, Steve.
God, E3 was... If you can look up E3 in the early 2000s, it is bedlam. It makes Vegas look tame. E3 was nuts. And then a few years ago, because Sony got roasted at E3. They got roasted.
Didn't they have a really bad performance a few years ago?
Yes, I was there. Yeah. I saw it. And they got destroyed. And so
were they the ones where like one of their biggest game announcements was like a workout title by this woman no one's heard of before?
They had there was a few. There was them and I think EA. They both got roasted one year. And so they're like, we're not coming anymore. We're doing our own thing.
Damn.
And now it's gone. Now it's dead. Well, they're going to rebuild it as a public only event. It's not going to be an industry event. But the point is like Nintendo Direct, D&D Direct. Everyone's doing directs, because in the old days, if you wanted to get in front of people, you had to go to a trade show. So everyone would go to the trade show. Everyone would be in one location. That's where you saw and did everything. You have the world of COVID just accelerated this. Everything's virtual. You don't need to go anywhere. You can do a direct. You can set up meetings. You don't even have to have people come from Japan like Nintendo Direct. Trust me, they love that, because that is a big pain in the ass to bring everyone from Nintendo from Japan to the US and set up those booths and like have all these demos. You know how much work that is? At Blizzard, they hated E3. They had to spend several months getting ready for E3 just so they can show E3 and then never show it again, because it was like work they made it just for E3, just for demos, and then it was like literally they're wasting 2 or 3 months. This Paizo kind of has that themselves when they have to do the stuff for Gen Con, right, Mark? I mean, they don't lose it, because at least they get to reuse the specials and they can be reused in other capacities, but they have to ramp up.
The organized play team, they definitely have a massive crunch. You probably saw episodes of Arcane Mark that were canceled leading into Gen Con because of all the extra work on Linda.
Yeah, so like all that crunch is now gone, and so those days are gone. Like D&D, they you know what, they'll do their own thing. Like maybe they'll have their own D&D experience.
I'm shocked there's no D&D con, honestly.
I'm actually kind of shocked too, but it's a lot of work and they don't make money off of it. Like those cons make no money unless you run. It's like
usually the convention center itself makes money.
Yeah, because I have friends who run cons, and I actually was helping them out, and I was like, how do you make money? Because you rent out the center and they only make money a few ways. They make money on the tickets, and they made money on booth rentals
Mhm.
and swag. And that was it. It was like that's all they do. And then if they bring guests in, they have to pay them. They have to fly them in. They have to comp them. They have to give them free room board, everything. So like a guest, you get someone from like The Walking Dead, that could be like $20,000. And then so what they would do is at the con, if like say they're signing autographs, they were guaranteed $20,000, which means okay, if they signed autographs and were charging whatever $100 a shot,
It's ridiculous.
they have to make 20,000, and if they only make say 15,000, then the con pays them the extra 5, and then anything extra they get to keep. So they're guaranteed a certain amount. They're guaranteed. And then that's why like Mark Hamill would have you buy, you have to, if you wanted Mark Hamill's autograph, you'd have to buy his book at like, which was like $38 or something. And then you would have to pay, it was like $300 or something. So in the end, it was like $500 to have his signature.
Jesus.
And you had to do it. It was no choice. That's how you did it. And some of these cons, like what's his name? The famous one from The Walking Dead, with the crossbow. Daryl was $100,000 for if you wanted him at a convention.
Just get him to show up?
And he was making so much money at the height. He was at every convention. I don't know if you remember that. Like he was at every single convention because he brought it and he was making that much money. Like it was basically, I charge $100,000, but I make $100,000. So it costs you nothing. Like that's how popular he was. And then it's when they stepped in and they said, no more. We're controlling this. This is getting out of hand because they were all doing the cons, and then AMC took over which cons they're allowed to go to.
Gotcha.
So it kind of got into a weird rant there when you're talking about D&D con, but this is the cons don't make money. Cons, like, I mean, some people make money, and that's why Gen Con charges for everything.
Mhm.
That's why they charge like for not just the actual, not just the convention and not just the booth space, but if you want to play a game or something, you have to pay $2. Who's making that money? It isn't the people putting out the games. They don't make any of that money. It goes to the convention. They make all that money. So it's it's a racket. But D&D could totally do that. Well, that's what D&D in a castle was doing. Do you remember that? D&D in a castle?
Oh yeah, that I don't think that's happened yet, but the prices are insane.
Yeah, it's happening. You can go and play D&D.
Isn't it like 50,000 a person?
It can
like
be
10,000.
Yeah, it's expensive, and then you go and play D&D with famous people, things like that. So.
Yeah, like Guy from How to Be a Great GM.
Mm-hmm.
Guy Sklanders. How much is a ticket to his? One of his tickets is $3,000.
Mm-hmm.
But that's still wild. Now I think that does cover. Hopefully that covers room and board, like at the castle.
Don't know. No, I hear you're doing something similar. Instead of D&D in a castle, it's Nodat at the motel. You're just gonna have a little con.
Yeah, as long as you buy me a pizza, you get to come in and I'll run a game for you.
All right, that is a deal.
No, but actually, we were talking about this at the con, and it is a $1 million idea that I have no idea how it hasn't been done yet. I don't have the business sense for this, but Airbnb?
Yes.
Airbnb. You deck out a house that looks like a massive tavern. You sell it out for like $1,000 for a weekend, so people can come in, play D&D in a thematic setting for 48 hours.
D&D.
How is that going to make you $1 million? That makes you at most 52,000.
Well, you would have more than one of these running.
Okay,
it would be a company. Like Airbnb is a company now.
He got you.
Yeah, if you have one of these at
Evermore. Have you heard of Evermore?
I have not. But if that's what it is,
Evermore
it's not a very catchy
Park.
name.
You're gonna lose your mind when you see this.
It's a Ren Fair?
It is not a Ren Fair. It's a fantasy fair, and it is pretty much what you expect it to be. It's kind of like a Ren Fair, but it's all fantasy.
But you see, this isn't a private event though. This is a public event.
True, but you do have the full experience where look at it. It's really cool.
Sure, but that's like, to me, that's similar to like a LARP.
Yeah.
Whereas you go with like 500 people. This would be like you and 5 friends stay in this house over 2 nights.
They had that for there's like they do have that for like D&D on the ship. Like those cruises.
I mean, are there D&D cruises?
Yeah, there are. I mean, there's like the Star Trek cruise. I know that one's like really. Yeah. That one is really popular, by the way. That Star Trek cruise.
D20 Cruise 2023.
There's gaming
cruise.
cruises. That I know there's gaming
Yeah.
cruises because I've seen people go on them.
Ooh.
Again, before the world of COVID, these cruises used to be really popular. Look up the
Sure.
look up the Star Trek cruise because like 5,000 people have been on Star Trek, so it was so easy for them to like find 30 people to put on a cruise. You know, like here you go, we'll pay you. You go on a cruise, it's free. We'll give you like the best room. We'll pay you money, and you just got to hang out, and you can eat anything you want and drink as much as you want. I actually once went to Vegas and not D&D experience, the Star Trek experience, which by the way is closed now, but was awesome. It was fantastic. I loved the Star Trek experience. They teleported you. They freaking it was
You got beamed up.
You got beamed up. It was insane. You were in a room, and then you would be, so it was like a very tight small room. I mean, I know how they did it, but you know, this was like tiny small room. They would beam you, the lights would go off, they'd come right back on, and you're in the middle of the bridge, and you're
That's
like,
awesome.
what? It was insane because they had the wall would disappear and they changed the back, so you're literally in the bridge and you're like, where the hell, where did everyone, and there's like 20 people looking at you. It was insane.
That's
Anyhow, I
awesome.
met Robert Picardo and the bar of all things and just hanging out with them. So
Nice.
who would they get for D&D in a dungeon or D&D?
I don't think a D&D cruise would be like necessarily about meeting celebrities. I think it would be more about, it's still basically a convention on a boat, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, but they have those.
I mean,
they
you
have D&D
could have,
conventions.
I guess, famous people that are like streamers that are famous in the
It would
community.
be you and me.
Or,
We'd be on it. That's right. Someone
like,
come
or
up
they
with
could
that
just
idea
have people
and
who are
invite
like
us.
dressed up like the famous D&D characters.
Sure. I mean, there would of course be a
Disney with
there'd
Mickey
always be a
Mouse.
cosplay contest. Like that would
Yeah.
happen.
But you could have people who are paid to be like in character as like D&D characters. Like, this is Raceland, and they're in a wizard outfit, and they're looking like a sickly wizard, and they're constantly like muttering about evil, nefarious plans that they're going to do or something like that. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. There was a plan.
Have Ed Greenwood dress up as Elminster from the Forgotten Realms and just go around.
He would do it. I've met him, and boy, he
Linda and I had him as a GM at one
Really?
PaizoCon game.
wow.
Yeah.
I met him, and that's all he talks about. It's like, do you know I invented Forgotten Realms? Really? He should have like a t-shirt that just says that, because that's like all he ever talks about. He's very nice. I'm not being mean, but he does like, that's all he, I was at a convention with him, and that's like, and Forgotten Realms wasn't as popular. This is back in 4th edition, so he was talking about it, but you know, I guess if I invented that too. The funny thing about the Sword Coast and Forgotten Realms is like there's this whole world, and it's like Tatooine. It's like we have this entire universe of planets, and everything takes place on one planet made out of sand where there's nothing happening. It's like, and we have this whole world, and everything is taking place in the 10 towns, and that's it. There's no other world. It's like everything there, and underground in the Drow. That's it. That's it. That's the whole world. That's all of. Well, now they have Dragonlance. Did anyone read the new book yet? I bought it, but I didn't read it yet.
Not yet.
Do you guys read Dragonlance? I was never a Dragonlance fan, but I know people love it. Oh, someone has a question. Creative Burst. For a graphic designer class product, I had to make an environmental room, and mine was you playing a 2E game in a Pathfinder lounge.
Nice.
Cool. What did you do? Did you have like dragons? And if you go to like Living Dungeon at Gen Con, that's very much what I would imagine. Those rooms are pretty
Or do you
cool.
mean like a 3D interpretation of a Pathfinder Society lodge?
Yeah.
That would be cool.
A lot. Okay.
That would be neat.
You have a lodge or a lounge?
It does say lounge.
Yeah,
but
it says lounge.
Yeah.
So I'm like, a lodge would be cool.
Right?
Yeah, then you have like the actual lodge, and then you have like all the books everywhere, and you have like all the Pathfinder Pathfinder articles and everything. So the Chronicles, you find the Chronicle books everywhere. You like pull them open, you're like, ooh, Chronicles. I would totally do that. That's the other thing, is that the world of fantasy, it's so weird. It's because like fantasy rules video games, but television, science fiction rules television for a long time. It took a long time for fantasy to get serious, and only because of Harry Potter and especially Game of Thrones did fantasy start kind of coming to its own. But I still see it struggling because it's that fine line between serious and silly. And for some reason, I don't know why, it's like it's very hard between like seeing people in these costumes, whether or not is that serious and cool looking, or is that silly and ridiculous? Like if you watch The Witcher, like sure, The Witcher looks freaking fantastic, but some of the Nilfgaardian, their weird armor with the wrinkles, it's like, ugh, it's a little goofy, that armor. I know they use it, there's a reason behind it, but it's kind of goofy. But then you have science fiction, and like science fiction is, I think, more realistic and tied to our reality, so it's easier to take the leap, even if it doesn't look as good. It's like, I can kind of see it. But then you see someone like dressed in a robe, like with pointed ears, and you're like, ew, what is going on there? That is just goofy. It's hard to take them seriously. I don't know where that went from. Anyhow, I was talking about like trying to make something realistic, like making a room of a 2E game. By the way, going back to Star Trek, do you know there's a dentist out there whose entire dentistry is based off Star Trek? Seriously, look it up. Everything in his office is Star Trek related. All the hygienists have to wear the uniforms he does. Take a look. I'm not kidding. So do you think that's where the future of D&D is? We'll have doctor-themed offices, D&D doctors. No, Dad, I'm asking you.
Oh, sorry, I don't know. Maybe, I don't know if it'll ever reach that kind. It's not as social media permeated in the same way as Star Trek, because Star Trek has reached beyond. And with Star Trek, everyone's sharing the same story. With D&D, you are not, is the big thing. Like D&D, Pathfinder, all the tabletop role-playing game, everyone has their own story in vaguely similar worlds. But even when you run a game in Galarian for Pathfinder versus when I run a game in Galarian, it's not even necessarily the same Galarian. Or if you watch Star Trek and I watch Star Trek, provided it's the same series, we both witness the same story and creates that camaraderie, which can be recognized on the surface right by, something like people wearing the same costumes in a dentist's office. And this was my overly serious answer to your hypothetical silly question.
I mean, I think it makes sense though, right? Because if your group just for some reason hated Elminster in the Forgotten Realms, you killed him.
Sure. Or he never existed.
The if you have someone being Elminster at a cruise, it's not going to react to your group's experience, because he's not going to be like, I hate you guys, you're the ones who killed me, or something.
Right.
Whereas everyone's experience with Star Trek may be different because it's filtered through your own lens, but you're at least seeing the same show.
Right.
So, like that, the character, the actor playing their own character with continuity from the show is not going to like jolt or surprise you too much, even if you did have some personal connection to it that went beyond the show. But it definitely will in Pathfinder, where like the outcome of that character could have been pretty different depending on how it ran.
Yeah, you show up to a con and see a guy in a blue shirt, black hair, and pointed ears. You go, oh, Spock. You show up to a D&D con, you see someone in armor, painted dark black drow skin and pointed ears, and you go, are you Drizzt, maybe your original character? I don't know. Or
you do what Amazon did, because remember in the Community episode, he dressed up as a drow, and they dropped the episode because they thought it was
really bad.
Because that was bad. But it's interesting. They're like, oh, that's a hate crime because he was dressed as a drow because they thought it was blackface, and I was like, wow, that is interesting. No, it's not Amazon. Sorry, Netflix dropped it, but you can still watch that episode, which is the D&D episode.
There's two D&D episodes, but well, that was the second one.
No, that was the first one, I thought. That was the first one. Yeah. It's the best, original one. The original one. Yeah. Excellent episode, by the way.
It is.
So what is your predictions? What is the one, if you're going to make one bold prediction about D&D 1 that hasn't been covered yet, what is your bold prediction known that? It could be anything. It could be rules related. It could be anything.
All right. This is a really hot take. It's going to make a lot of money.
Wow.
I know. Hard to believe.
Well, the thing is, it's like, they are starting to finally spend money, because the D&D team, when I keep thinking about when D&D Next first came out, if you think about it, they had this very small team. It was just like nobody. It was like a dozen people of that. It was so small. The adventures they outsourced, and they were proud they outsourced them. Like, oh yeah, we didn't write any of this crap. We had like other people write everything. They like outsourced everything, and then slowly it started to get more popular, and slowly they started to add people, and then this year, the last year, oh boy, are they hiring. They're basically hiring Paizo over there. They hired everybody, and they're expanding that team like crazy. And obviously, they're coming out with more and more and more content more frequently, coming out with more books, and they're just going to keep cranking them out. But they were not spending the money for D&D. I don't think anyone. I think D&D. And this is in that book, if you read that history book about D&D, it's that D&D back in the 80s, when they basically ruled the world and everyone heard of them and they were making money hand over fist, they would go to these game shows, they would go to Toy Fair, and everyone looked down on them. Everyone was like, ugh, D&D, nerds, geeks. Like, they just, even in their own community, they were looked down upon forever. And I think Hasbro, even up until just recently, even looked down on their own brand, and we're just like, ugh, whatever. It wasn't even. I did a whole thing on this. If you look at their marketing material and you look at their annual reports, they didn't even mention D&D until recently. It was never even in their annual reports. That's how little they cared about it. Now, not only was it in their annual reports, not only is the new president from the WotC division, it is becoming the center of Hasbro. In fact, how did Hasbro's other divisions do? Oh, that's right. They all lost money. That's right. Everything lost money except for Dungeons and Dragons and Magic the Gathering. Everything. So, yeah, you're going to be hearing them talk about D&D. In fact, now there's talk, and some of the shareholders were asking for Hasbro to break off Magic the Gathering and D&D and WotC as its own company, which is ironic because it was its own company, and they got absorbed because they're saying that the rest of Hasbro is dragging down their earnings because they make so much money for Hasbro that it is unfair to those brands and they should break off. That vote failed, by the way, so they're not doing it, but they're going to start hiding. The funny thing is they used to hide Magic and hide D&D. Now they're starting to bring D&D and Magic's earnings front and center, and they're hiding their other brands. They don't want to talk about how those brands are doing because they're all doing terrible. Until it's all D&D, and you're going to see like D&D toys, D&D video games, D&D movies.
Existed for years now.
It has, but not to this extent. Not to the extent that they're going to be making it like. It's going to be like Star Wars, where they'll make all these worlds. I'd say my guess is in 5-ish years, you're going to start seeing, they're going to come out with the D&D movie. Then they're going to come out with the TV show, because Hasbro owns the company that did Yellow Jackets, which was really popular, did very, very well, by the way. So they have a production company so they can make TV shows. They're going to do a TV show. They'll do a Ravenloft TV show. They're going to do a Dragonlance TV show. They'll do a Dark Suns TV. They'll do one just like Star Wars universe. They'll get all the universes out there. They'll get some main characters. They'll get into the zeitgeist. They'll come out with supporting materials where then you can play in those worlds on their virtual tabletop. They'll have the main characters there. They'll have the main villains there. It's all going to be this one gigantic ecosystem where everything ties into each other. And that is where I see D&D in probably closer to 10 years, but in 5 years, you're going to start seeing it actively being promoted.
I do think they'll need to survive the next year or two, where I think sales will go slightly down with the new edition. It's
not a new edition.
With the new rule set being announced, and the world being more back to normal than it was the past 2 years, and people having less free time, I do think sales will dwindle, and then depending on the success of OneD&D and their tabletop, they'll see a huge spike back up.
I mean, that's partially why they announced the new edition as not being an edition.
Correct.
To try to prevent the sales from going down as much as they would have if they said the new edition was a new edition.
Yeah, that's why Starfinder was pretty much invented. from what I know. I mean, you know better than me, Mark, but like as soon as they announced second edition Pathfinder, like the first edition sales tanked, and they needed something to keep them afloat, and Starfinder was it. And Starfinder was great. I mean, it was a huge hit. I think it did better than anyone expected. I remember it sold out like in Gen Con, like the first few hours, like everything was gone.
Well, it's because the industry knows what a science fiction or science fantasy RPG sells, even if it has the Star Wars name on it, which Starfinder was just a new IP. And what the industry knowledge and the industry wisdom knows was incorrect about Starfinder, because they like the industry knowledge was, wisdom was like, take the creators of Dungeons and Dragons, give them Star Wars, divide your sales by 4, and do that with any company, divide their sales by 4 at best. But Starfinder did better than that. So it outperformed people's expectations of what you could do with the science fantasy, which is still way less than a fantasy. But Starfinder was just absolutely an amazing property from the get-go, and way better than anything else in its space. Space.
No, I love Star. I mean, that was my first actual play. I like just well, because they did science fantasy, and they also got right place, right time, Guardians of the Galaxy, science fantasy, bingo. Like they really had good timing when that came out. But I think if you look at what they're doing, I agree, Nona. I don't think it's going to tank. I don't even think it's going to go down. They're coming out with Dragonlance. People love Dragonlance. They have the books. They have the new games coming out. They have all the new worlds. They're going to have a new rule set for D&D every single month. They're going to make sure there's controversial stuff in there. They're going to make sure they say controversial things so that everybody goes crazy on the YouTubes and it stays within the public zeitgeist. There's still Stranger Things season 5 coming out. Don't forget, there's still got one more to go. They are going to make this stay within the zeitgeist as much as possible until, you're right, until the 2024 version comes out. Oh, we got Rules Lawyer. Hey, man, I haven't seen you in like forever, dude. Where are you? I never see you around anymore. You should come on the show, too. Mark, any predictions when Starfinder 2E happens by Phoenix D. Wright?
I mean, who knows?
There you go.
There's no way to predict. You can look at how long editions of games normally last and try to guess it based on that, but Paizo has always bucked the trend and had editions last longer than most other companies do. So
I don't think Starfinder second edition is going to happen. I think they would do like a 1.5 if anything. Keep in mind, Starfinder's doing some pretty crazy things right now. First of all, they're only releasing their adventure pass as hardcover books from now on. Their Starfinder Society is gargantuanly popular. It is incredibly popular. Like Starfinder in its own way bucks the trends in a lot of weird ways. Are we gonna say no, Nat?
I was just gonna say that Paizo has gone on record saying they have not even started thinking about Starfinder 2.
Yeah. I don't think they're gonna be. I think Starfinder's in like a good space.
Space.
You see what I just did there? They're in a good space. Outer space. They're doing cool things with the story, though. Like the storylines in Starfinder are pretty interesting. Even though I don't play it anymore, I still follow it because I find the story, the meta story, really cool. The problem with it is like I loved Starfinder and we were playing it every week, and then Pathfinder Second Edition came out. We're like, oh. And we liked Starfinder, but oh my god, we like Pathfinder way more, unfortunately. And I don't have time for 2 games right now. So, what's your guess, Mark? Those are my guesses. No, Nat says they're going to make a lot of money. Mine is that it's going to go.
For OneD&D.
Yeah, for OneD&D. Mine's that they're going to be going the Disney-esque route of TV shows, movies, all that crap, and sort of try to become the Marvel of fantasy.
I think they're definitely going to try to become the Marvel Cinematic Universe type style of like making it a meta thing that becomes big, because that's what everybody's trying to do. And so far, most people have failed to reproduce what Marvel did, but that doesn't mean other people aren't going to try, because if they do, then it is a big payoff. And even the failures are not exactly like hemorrhaging tons of money, right? They just aren't quite making it up to the Marvel standard. So I think they're definitely going to try to do that, and it's a smart plan.
Yeah, I hear they're bringing back the Mummy. Remember that Marvel? Remember that cinematic universe known that?
Oh, star from 1999, starring Brandon Fraser and Rebecca Weisz.
No, the
Rachel
one
Weisz?
starring Tom Cruise, the Dark Universe.
Oh, from 2017.
Did you ever see that one?
I haven't seen that one. No, I've been told not to.
Oh,
I've been told it doesn't exist.
Nonad has this aversion to mummy movies.
I have an aversion to movies.
Oh, well, really?
It's just too long to sit in place.
Mm-hmm.
Also, Rules Lawyer, I believe Eric Mona mentioned it in the Q&A at PaizoCon this past year. I don't know if they've ever publicly said it in like any forum online or anything that Starfinder 2 isn't on the radar, but I believe someone asked on the Q&A. And of course, that could just be Eric on the spot having to come up with an answer. But, yeah.
That could be. So I'll give us 5 more minutes and then 2 hours and we're done.
have less than that for me because this is the day where Linda
3
has
minutes.
something exactly.
All right, 2 minutes.
2 minutes. No, what's going on with you the rest of this week?
The rest of this week, I'm playing a lot of sessions. For me, it's back to making videos as usual. I've got a full-time editor on the team now, which is awesome. That's going well. Yeah. And then it's just working. No, Ray is mine. And then other than that, it's just crunch time for Sinclair's. You know, we're looking at that January release day, give or take. So we are crunching down. A lot of the designs are being finalized, so it's going to be starting just to put pen to paper.
Yikes! Have fun with that. Let me tell you, I know all about that. Back to Kickstarters. Thank you, Rules Lawyer. Yes, do pack. Kickstarter at rollforcombat.com. This is last week, and the crazy part is like there's a lot of things on there. We're not going to have everything available afterwards. Like one thing I did in the first one is that we had a lot of the things available, but like the meetings with me and Mark when we're doing the ancestries and the races and the play test and the dragon books, you know, that stuff is not going to be available. So you either get in the Kickstarter or you don't get it. That's
what dragon books?
The Elder decks.
Oh, the Elder decks.
Yeah,
oh, right, the ones that are like have a dragon or a phoenix.
Yeah. Okay. Like you can get it, and there's add-ons right now. But if you're not in it, they're not, because we actually having our new store coming up. The battlezoo.com store, the new one is going to be coming up probably. It's actually ready to go. I didn't launch it this week because too much is going on, so probably next week. But the new store looks sweet.
Nice.
I'm really impressed by it based on like other stores that I've seen for tabletop RPG stuff. That the Roll for Combat news store looks really sleek.
It's almost like I have 30 years experience building websites or something. It's kind of weird, but actually it's just simple. That's actually the secret. It's like everyone's like, I'm like, what does it do? It's like you can buy things. That's kind of it. It's like there's not a lot to it. It's actually extremely straightforward and just lets you do what you need to do. Go, click, buy, there you go. It doesn't have a lot of other things.
Also,
what about you?
William asks, how do I play Pathfinder without sitting for hours? I GM. That's true. That's the answer. Yeah. I can't be a player. I get so distracted as a player.
And Mark, what are you doing this week?
I've got to go.
Oh, you got to go? All right, well, Mark is out, but we're going to see everyone tomorrow. And back to Kickstarter. We'll see you tomorrow.
Our regular time for the week. Bye.
Tomorrow, bye.